Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here, folks. My name is Brian, and today we are talking about a 4K Criterion release, one that was much anticipated by me and did not disappoint, and that is Brian De Palma's film Blowout from 1981. Really one of his best, arguably his best film. I mean, depends on what you're into, but it's one of my favorites, top 2 or 3 for sure, and just a movie that has really endeared itself to me the more that I watch it. Really excited to see this get a 4K release. Obviously, it had a Criterion Blu-ray release previous to this, and the new 4K transfer looks very nice. According to Criterion, it's a new 4K digital restoration, and it's presented in Dolby Vision HDR, and you also get a Blu-ray as well. So you get the the 4K and the Blu-ray, a booklet, and I know it's going to be tough for some people to decide if they want to actually upgrade this, and I get it. I don't have like an A to B comparison of the two transfers, but I do think this looks very nice. And again, since it's one of my favorite De Palma films, it was an absolute must to get. But for those that don't know the story of Blowout, it is a fascinating one. It is about a sound man played by John Travolta, who had worked with De Palma previously on Carrie. And this sound man is working on a low-budget horror feature, which we see at the beginning of the film, which is pretty fun in terms of the way that it's throwing the audience right into this POV shot of this slasher movie. And it's very cheesily done on purpose, very sort of clumsy in some of its tropes and camera work, and sort of De Palma just having a laugh in a way. But one of the main things is that we cut back from the footage of the film. It ends with a woman in a shower screaming very badly, and the scream becomes sort of a point of the plot. They need to cast somebody to do a new scream for this actor. And there's also some other bad sound effects in the movie that the director complains to the Jack Terry character, that's the Travolta character, about, you know, that wind sounds terrible, that's library stuff, we used it on a bunch of films, we'll get some new wind. So this is actually based apparently on De Palma's interactions with one of his own sound designers that he said, you know, record some new sounds. So the idea is that Jack Terry goes out to record some new wind sounds, and he's out at night, and he happens to, while recording the wind, witness and record an auto accident. A car careens off the road into this sort of river, and he jumps into the water and pulls a woman, played by Nancy Allen, out of the car and saves her life. We come to find out that she was in the car with somebody kind of important in the plot, and it becomes sort of conspiratorial, and it kind of goes from there. I don't really want to give away too much more than that, but there is a mix of filmmaking stuff wherein we get to see Travolta using his skills as a sound man, syncing up sound to some footage that he gets, which I'm not really going to talk about. There's some JFK assassination conspiracy theory stuff, which is something that's fascinated De Palma for a long time. You see the beginnings of that in Greetings way back, and it comes through in other films that he does. He's clearly fascinated by that whole phenomenon, but it weaves together in this really interesting story of this sound man who gets caught up in this conspiracy, and it's an incredible performance by John Travolta. It is a movie that I remember discovering for the first time because it was on a list of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies back in the 90s, right around the time Pulp Fiction was made, and I know he said that he loved Travolta so much in this movie, and that clearly was part of the reason he cast him in Pulp Fiction, and you can see why. He's really great in this movie, very empathetic, is just really doing a nice job. And there's a great story about De Palma talking to him, and the Travolta sort of saying, hey, what are you up to? And him saying, well, I'm doing this low-budget thing about a sound man and having no thought that Travolta would ever be interested. And he sends it to him, and he decides to do it. And then he says he wants to do it with Nancy Allen, who was worked with him in Carrie, but also was De Palma's wife at the time. And they end up being really good together in the film. Dennis Franz also plays sort of a scummy dude in the film, and John Lithgow plays an even scarier guy, sort of, you know, kind of predating, I mean, definitely predating his time on Dexter, but giving you a sense of the kind of evil character he could play. And yeah, it's just a really great movie in terms of the filmmaking. It's shot by Vilmos Zsigmond. There's some wonderful split diopter shots, the classic De Palma technique, and there's a 360-degree shot that is amazing in the movie. And I just love it. It's really great. Incredible ending. And there's some stuff that comes out in the conversation with Noah Baumbach, which is from 2010. It's about 58 minutes. And it feels like the impetus for what would later become the De Palma documentary that Baumbach and Jake Paltrow do in 2015. Just a really neat conversation. They're just clearly like they've hung out. It sounds like they've watched movies together, and Baumbach is just a big fan, and he's asking about stuff. And De Palma's just very matter-of-fact about a lot of his answers, and he's just great to listen to in terms of talking about the filmmaking. Very smart guy, obviously. But one of the things he talks about is the reason that he was able to get away with such a crazy, dark ending is because his producer, George Leto, ended up being the head of the studio, Filmways, at the time this film was being produced. So once they got to the ending and it's as dark as it is, the producer had signed off on it, so there was nobody to say no. And that's one of the reasons it's such a unique film in De Palma's filmography, is it really goes to exactly where he wants it to go, and it really is memorable in that sense as well. So that's neat stuff. But there's a lot of great stories. It's a great conversation in the extra features with Baumbach and De Palma, you know, talking about that sound designer exchange that sort of inspired the conversation, and syncing up sound. You know how you used to have to do it on an flatbed editor thing. This is before digital stuff, so there's real hands-on filmmaking stuff in this that was attractive to him. He talks about that 360-degree shot. He talks about it's the first time he used Steadicam. It was in this movie. Working with Travolta, De Palma's general political mindedness, his feelings about blow up in the conversation, some unfortunate reshoots, which are crazy to hear that he had to deal with because some negative was stolen. Sparing use of close-ups. This, let's see, the ending, the studio being unhappy with the ending, but not being able to do anything about it. It's just a wide-ranging conversation, and I love it. I love watching it. It makes me want to watch De Palma right afterwards. There's an interview with Garrett Brown. It's about 15 minutes. He's sort of the inventor of the Steadicam, and he shows the actual device, and he talks about coming back from shooting The Shining and how he was asked to do something he never did, which was this POV shot, and talks about doing it in this bad and clumsy way for the opening, you know, cheesy horror movie that they're shooting in Blowout, and the difference between the impact of certain kinds of Steadicam shots. It's a neat little interview, you know, just to see the mechanism of a Steadicam if you've never seen that before, and how it's a counterbalance kind of system and how it works. But very cool interview there. There's a Nancy Allen interview about 25 and a half minutes, and she talks about all kinds of stuff. Immediate chemistry with Travolta on the auditions for Carrie, and how that sort of carried through to this, and how there was never a plan for her to be in Blowout, and how it came about because of Travolta, and how she made his character, this character, distinct from her role in Dressed to Kill, which she had just done with De Palma, and which the studio was hoping to get, you know, another Dressed to Kill. And if you see Dressed to Kill and the ending of Dressed to Kill, very different from Blowout, just a very different movie. And obviously it didn't do as well as Dressed to Kill did. But she talks about the voice. The character has a very specific sort of high-pitched voice, and how that came from like Judy Holliday in Born Yesterday and Giada Messina in La Strada, and what it was like to work with Travolta, their chemistry, working with Brian, her husband, and how he respects actors, and working with Dennis Franz again. She'd worked with him in Dressed to Kill. Lithgow, and how he has to sort of manhandle her a little bit in the film, and he was afraid of hurting her. There's some really great story that's quite harrowing about her experience in a submerged car in a tank. When the car goes in the water, there's actually a shot from inside the car with the water filling up, and she's an incredible claustrophobic person. And De Palma tells this story in his interview as well, and how much he just about canceled the entire shot when he could see the fear in her face on the day they were shooting it. He was like, "Oh, I can't do this," you know. She's like, "No, I'm gonna do it," and it obviously was a really harrowing thing, you know. And so she talks about that, the critical reception of the film at the time versus now. It's a nice interview with her. So that is, I think, there's some on-set photographs by Louis Goldman. Oh, Murder a la Mode, the 1967 feature debut by De Palma, which is an interesting black and white, kind of experimental narrative. You know, definitely you can see some Hitchcock and some Godard influence in it. It's if not entirely successful, it is a very interesting watch in comparison to Blowout, which I think is him at the peak of his craft. I'm not saying he went downhill from Blowout, but he's really at his peak in filmmaking in Blowout, and to see his meager beginnings, which are still very ambitious and still interesting, it's a very interesting comparison. The essay in the booklet by critic Michael Sragow is included as well, and it's just a really nice release. Like I said, I think the 4K looks really good, and Vilmos Zsigmond's photography is done even more justice and detail by the 4K scan, the 4K transfer, and I was not disappointed with it. So definitely worth a pickup if you're a De Palma fan, or if you're just a fan of this film. Even worth a blind buy if you're not. If you're into well-constructed conspiracy thrillers, this is definitely your movie. Anyway, so well worth your time. The 4K upgrade of Blowout, Brian De Palma's film. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.